Amelia, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I don't know a whole lot about plays, but my brother is an actor, so I've actually been to a few plays in New York. He spent some time in the theater there, so that's about my only connection to acting. But let's start with me fumbling all over my words here.
But that's good. I mean,
Uh,
I like talking to people who don't have like a ton of experience in the theater. That's
yeah,
it's lovely. I
I've got
like it.
lots
Yeah.
of yeah, I've got lots of questions for people who don't know anything about acting.
I
But
love
anyway,
it. I mean,
let,
yeah.
let's start with when you were young. What did you want to be when you grew up? When you were a little girl?
Oh, so fun. Well, I think that I honestly, like, I remember really wanting to be a marine biologist for a bit of time. Like, I really wanted to go out and like be on a boat in the ocean and like follow dolphins around. Um, and then I don't know what happened to that dream, but that's something I really remember wanting. And it's funny because both of my kids, I think, kind of want to do that too. Um, and then I think for a period I wanted to be a dancer, and then ever since I was certainly middle school, early middle school on, I wanted to be an actor. So it's been a while.
All
It's been
right,
most of my life.
great. I was chuckling because I studied biology. I studied marine biology, and I live on a boat. This is my boat. I'm on
Oh,
a boat
that's
right now.
amazing. I love it. Oh, amazing. Amazing. That's
Yeah, and
so cool.
there's
I love it.
dolphins. Yeah, there's dolphins all around. On a regular
Oh,
basis.
I'm so jealous. That's fantastic. I
So you
love
might
it.
see my
I love it.
microphone swinging around a little bit. That's because I'm in a moving environment here.
Amazing.
So, what did you do to become an actor?
Well, I mean, I started doing shows, plays. Um in I was born in Rhode Island, and we lived there until I until after third grade. And in Rhode Island, I was at a great dance studio, and I danced a lot. I danced like as many times a week as I could, and I did recitals. I mean, I was very young. But then when we moved to Maine, the dance studios were much further away because we moved to a very small town. And so I couldn't take dance really more than like once a week. And so my father, who has always been creative and also is a boat man and a sort of like he would sell fish to restaurants. Technically, he's a fishmonger, I think. Retired now, but also spent a lot of time living on boats and being on boats. Um, but he's also always played instruments, and he's a singer. So he took me to audition for the first musical that I was ever in fourth grade. And that was Oliver. That was the first show I did. And that was with the community theater in Ellsworth, Maine. And so all of my growing up, fourth grade until I graduated high school, I was able to be part of our community theater in Down East Maine, which looking back, I realized was really an amazing experience. And I probably didn't appreciate it enough at the time because I was from a small town, and we had a small middle school, small elementary school, small high school. So we didn't have a lot of drama club opportunities within the schools. So we always felt like it wasn't really fair that we didn't get to like do big musicals or big plays at our school. But I think that for me, having those community theater experiences is in a way made me a little more prepared for, I don't know, theater out in the real world in some ways, because I was with adults, and I had really great directors, and I was surrounded by people who were really talented. And I studied as much as I possibly could, usually in the summers. So like theater camp and all of those sort of I don't know, typical things that somebody might make a spoof movie about, theater camps. Um, and then in high school, sort of took it more seriously. I did a Shakespeare summer in Portland, Maine, which is the big sort of creative city in Maine. And then I did a summer at NYU. And then I went to NYU, and I went to Tisch, and I studied acting um, at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. And I also teach there now. So I started acting there when I was 17, that summer before college. And then I went to college at NYU and studied at Lee Strasberg. And I've been there for, wait, I can't even do the math, like 25 years now. Too many years to say out loud.
Wow.
So So, and I, even at Strasberg, which is really like a home away from home for me, I've had wonderful, wonderful teachers. And so even as I started teaching, I kept studying with my teachers as much as I could when I could, because I really believe in being a lifelong learner. And I certainly feel like you can never stop learning when it comes to acting, that there's always more to figure out and more to work on and more to sort of challenge yourself with. So, so I study whatever I can, as much as I can, and I teach now. And I am a member of a couple great theater companies, and then I'm doing this show that I'm producing now. So, yeah, that's what I did to become an actor. I don't know. I went to school, and then I worked in restaurants for a really long time, and then I decided to let that go. And I went back. I went to grad school for educational theater, so that actually sort of like catapulted me just back into not working in restaurants, which really made me be able to work as an actor a lot more. So,
You know, you mentioned you believe in being a lifelong learner, and I completely agree with that. I'm a writer, and that you can study that, you know, forever as well. But it's hard for me to even conceive of what an actor studies. So, can you just give us an example of something you've learned recently or studied recently?
I love that. So, I specifically study and specifically teach method acting. And I think a lot of people think of method acting and they think of like Daniel Day-Lewis living like Abraham Lincoln for like 2 years. But that's actually not method acting at all. That is actually the opposite of method acting. And method acting is a lot of things. There are a lot of different teachers and there's a lot of different schools. It's really just having a method or a technique that you can use to reproduce a performance over and over and over again, is the idea, which was from Stanislavski, who brought that idea over to America. Stanislavski was Russian. So, and specifically with Lee Strasberg, he specifically introduced sense memory into method acting, which is a technique where you use your own experiences to relate to a character and to create truthful, interesting behavior on stage. So for me, using sense memory is certainly a lifelong practice, because it's there's just so much to dive into. So an example of a sensory exercise, or an example of a sensory experience that we've all had, for instance, is when you hear that song that was at your high school prom, or maybe playing when you didn't go to the high school prom, or whatever it is, and you hear the song and you're like back there all of a sudden. You feel like you're in high school. You feel that you have that dress on or that tux on, or that you're at home and like you didn't go, and you feel either great that you didn't go because you thought whatever it is, but it brings you back to that moment and you have that feeling of being 17 again. So that's an example of sort of what sense memory is. And it's the idea that our senses have a memory. And that when we sort of put ourselves back in those experiences, it creates behavior that's truthful in imaginary circumstances, like a play. So for me, it's, and one of the things that's so amazing is that you don't want to sort of like take parallel experiences. Like if you're playing Lady Macbeth, for instance, first of all, you don't have to have had the experience of being a murderess, as some people think. Like that's what method acting, like they think if you're going to play Macbeth, you go out and kill people, and that's actually the opposite. But you do find something from your life, maybe where you've wanted to kill somebody, or maybe it's just killing a fly or whatever it is, or maybe it's the feeling of sun beating down on you that makes you so uncomfortable and so antsy and so angry that it on stage it looks like you're about to kill someone, but you're really just doing an exercise of sun beating down on you. So there's just so much to explore. And every time I play a new character, I get to figure out like, okay, what am I going to use from my life to understand who this character is and to play this character in a very truthful way, but in a way that only I can play it. So it's just like, there's just so much. And in terms of learning, I mean, I think there's so many techniques and there's so many ways to go about a character or to go about a play. like for some people, for instance, maybe they've never done Shakespeare. And so even though they may have a fantastic career, they may all of a sudden get to perform Shakespeare for the first time. And so for that for them is going to be a new experience and something that they have to learn and get used to. So I think it's not necessarily like you learn something new, like you take a new, I don't know, like in biology, maybe you go into like a different type of animal life or something. I don't know. It's not, but it's more like, how do you sort of use everything you've learned to make it really fit into the given project? And that's always kind of like a mystery. And it always just takes a lot of experimentation, and like you try this and that doesn't work, so you throw it away, and you try something else and that doesn't work, so you throw it away. And you never, and like whenever I'm playing a different character in rehearsal, I might not know what works. Like I may have to have, like maybe you're doing a very dramatic play and you have to have a breakdown. But like I've had times where I've sort of maybe made a choice, but it's too much. Like I hyperventilate on stage and I can't act, and that's not helpful to anybody. And that means like, no, that choice is not healthy for me, but also it's not working because I can't breathe. Like this is silly, throw it away, find something else. So you sort of always, I don't know, it's kind of just like every show you do or every job you have is a different challenge and like a different mystery, a different puzzle that you have to sort of like put the pieces together to see how it's going to go. That was a very long answer to your question, and I don't know if it answered your question, but
that was a very good answer. Yeah, very thorough. You answered more than one. I was going to ask you next how you called up emotions, but I think you answered that as well. You think of something in your past that calls up that emotion. Is that correct in a nutshell?
Yeah, yes and no. It's interesting because we work in a couple stages, and the first stage is relaxation. So you have to learn to physically relax and mentally relax and emotionally relax so that you're kind of open to the expression. And then you also have to learn how to express. And I think a lot of people become actors because like we have a lot of big feelings, but we don't know how to express them. So, and I think a lot of people, when they start acting, they feel all this stuff, but they don't know how to express it. Like they don't know how to, just within the character, make it real. And so for an audience, it doesn't really matter if you're feeling it all on the inside if we don't see the character living that experience. But with sense memory, within that relaxed state, you work on the senses. So you work on, like, if we do like a place exercise, which is a very sort of big all-encompassing exercise, but you work on, what do I see in that place? And you start working with your eyes closed, and you build the place in front of you with your eyes closed a teeny bit at a time. And once you've maybe built the place, what's in front of you, to the side of you, behind you, then you work on, what do you smell in the place? Maybe what do you taste? What do you feel? And it's all just like an exploration of your senses. And certain people, different senses are stronger for them or more potent for them. So it is recalling in a way, but it's really using the five senses. What do you see? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you touch? What do you smell within that experience? Because the idea is that if it's the right choice for the character, then you can recreate that, let's say, whatever, 8 times a week if you're on Broadway for 2 years or something. Not that I've had that experience, unfortunately, but maybe someday.
I'm sure it's coming. I think we can all, when I say we, I mean people who aren't actors, but who watch movies and go to shows. I think we can all recognize when someone is really good or when they're really bad, but I don't think we know why, or I don't anyway. I can tell, like when I'm watching a movie, I can tell when someone's just bad at what they're trying to do, but I don't know why. Can you sort of explain what makes a good actor or what makes a bad actor?
I mean, it's such a good question. And I think it's, one of my favorite teachers, one of my best teachers, she would say, like, I don't care if you like it. Like, it's fine if you like it. But what is working? Like, what is the person doing that is working? What are they creating? And I think it is difficult because also with film, it's difficult as well because a lot of it is editing. I mean, you can have a person who is not a skilled actor look amazing on film because of the editing or because of the directing music, like all of the elements coming together. So it can sort of be all encompassing and sort of hard to figure out, is it the acting or, what is it? For me, what I look for is, I think like originality. Like I think of like Meryl Streep and Al Pacino and Robert De Niro, Marlon Brando, who are very classic examples of like sort of old school method actors. And the characters that they create are very unique. Like you've never, like nobody else is going to do Taxi Driver that way. So to me, I think it's, are you playing this character the way that only you can play it? Like, but all the way. But it's very hard. It's hard to tell. I mean, sometimes it's hard for me to tell, because sometimes I'm like, like I love a certain person because they're fun or whatever, or because they're cute or because they're beautiful. And sometimes it's hard to tell if it's the skill. So I think it's very nuanced. And I think that because we live right now, with so much social media and everything is so short, I think it's just even harder to tell, because I think that we've lost some really amazing film actors, and I think we have less of an appreciation. I mean, when you watch old movies, it's such a difference. I think there's to me, the actors are so unique, and like the characters that they're playing are just so vibrant and interesting and nuanced. And it's just like a character that just at one point you would like see them in your real life, but at the same time, you've never seen anybody like that before in your real life. I don't know if I don't have a good answer to the question, but I think it's some combo of like being realistic and behaving truthfully, but also being so interesting that it's like something new, that it's like something you've never seen before, and that it makes you feel something.
I like that. I like especially when you said that doing something as only you can do it and going all the way. That can apply to any art.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and even not an art in a way, And I mean, in some ways, I work with kids all the time, and in some ways, there's even a kid who's maybe not technically the most skilled dancer or like technically the most skilled singer, if they are like on that stage and they are 100% themselves and they're committed, I would so much rather watch that than someone who's like technically incredibly proficient but isn't in the moment, or like isn't really being themselves, or is sort of just doing a cliched version of whatever the character is. There's some, being vulnerable and being honest is just a really beautiful thing to see, whether it's on stage or whether it's painting or whether it's a musician. And I mean, like for me, I love visual art, but I have no idea. I don't know what's good and what's not. I have no idea. It's like it's the same. It's the same thing. It's like, all right, cool.
Well, I watched your short film yesterday on your website. The short film about the play that you're doing right now.
The Yankees one. Yeah, great.
Yeah, hang on. Let me spit it out correctly. I watched your short film about pardon me, all she cares about is the Yankees. And I loved it. I was really impressed. You were bringing up complex emotions one after another. One minute you were pretending to be happy, and then you were sad, and then you were angry, and then you were trying to hide it all the next minute. It was like, at least three major emotions just kind of in a roller coaster. Bang, bang, bang. That seems like it would be extremely difficult to pull that off. Can you just describe what goes into pulling off a little piece like that?
Yeah, and thank you. That is those words are like that is awesome to hear. Thank you so much. So that that short film is actually a piece of a monologue from the whole play. And that bit of the monologue is sort of what started me on the journey of the whole play in general, because I was looking for a monologue and I found that monologue. So I started working on that monologue in class. So that particular monologue, it's funny because I've been thinking about releasing it, but I have a video of me working on that monologue in class with my, I think at the time, 11-month-old like strapped onto me and in the carrier, and I'm like sitting in it because it was a Zoom class because this was 2020. So this was like right in the middle of COVID, and also that's when we filmed this film. I filmed it in my room. We were at my parents in Maine, and I filmed it in my childhood bedroom, and then I sent it to the woman who was helping me, Kirsten Russell, who's a good friend of mine, who's a great director and a great screenwriter, and she added all the film elements to it, the sort of the flashbacks and the photos and stuff. But with that, so for that monologue, when I first read it, I instantly felt a connection to it. It sort of made sense to me. And sometimes that'll happen with pieces, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes you'll get a character where you're like, I don't know why this person does what they do, or you just don't like the character that much, and you still have to do the work anyway. But with Spanky, in this show, I just instantly felt a connection to her and to the words she was saying. So that helps. That is, in a way, I think it's sort of an inspiration. It's sort of like that kind of like untangible thing that you can't really necessarily create. Either you sort of get the character or you don't. And so for me, Spanky she just makes sense to me. And then so like for that monologue, the show takes place in the 80s, and so she's making a tape to her father because she's just this weird woman who makes tapes instead of writing a note. I don't know. But so she's recording a tape to her father, and she's trying to figure out what is wrong with her, like what is going on, because she hasn't been able to leave her apartment for 43 days. And she doesn't know why. She doesn't know what her problem is. So there are different elements in that monologue that like for me, using sense memory and for using method acting, like there's a part where she talks about being leading the high school basketball team to the championships, and there's a part where she talks about her coach being pretty sexist and being just like kind of a jerk to her. And like, for instance, like that part, I didn't have that experience, but I had experiences in high school where I felt I felt unsafe, or I felt really judged, or I felt just misunderstood and judged, and not rightly so. And so I like that part, for instance, really reminded me of specific times in my high school experience. So for me, I didn't have to do a lot to really feel that anger. The part where you're talking where she's getting very angry, for me, that's like that anger is still there. But you work on it in a way where when I'm done filming or when I'm done working, you walk away. Like you don't still feel the anger. And that's really important, I think. And that's something that I try to teach my students, that it's not real. It's fake circumstances. And so it's important to be able to let it go when you're done, because you don't want to walk around. I mean, most characters are pretty miserable because that's just the way theater works. That's the way film works. Like even if it's comedy, a lot of times if it's comedy, they're even more miserable because it's heightened. So you don't want to walk around feeling the way your character feels all the time. That's like a miserable way to live for the most part, because most characters, most of the time, their lives are falling apart. But so, and then you sort of, with any monologue or with any show, it depends on the person, but I usually find an objective, and an objective is, what does the character want from either the person they're speaking to, or if it's a monologue, what do they want to get from themselves? But even though this is a monologue, she is speaking to her dad. So it's a little bit of both. So I have to figure out, like, why is she saying this? What does she want to get? What does she need from her father, or what does she need from herself? And then you sort of go about figuring out, okay, what parts of the monologue do I get? And then what part of the monologues feel very far away from me, like I don't really relate to. And then if it's a part you don't really relate to, then I find a way to relate to it, if that makes sense. And then in terms of the emotions, I think it's just, you're just sort of, I don't really know how to explain it. I mean, in a way, you're sort of kind of like watching yourself sort of out of yourself in a way as an actor, because you know it's not real and you know you're performing. And so you sort of also try to figure out what the director needs you to do and what the audience needs to see, but then balance that with not thinking about that so that you're being true to the character. But I think one thing is that you don't want to think about the emotion. You don't want to think like, I have to be angry here, or I have to be sad here, or I have to cry here. What you want to do is think of what is happening with the character. What does she want? And what is keeping her from getting what she wants? Those are the obstacles. So that is, again, a long answer.
It's another very good answer.
I try to work on things.
Yeah. No, I like that. You're not thinking, okay, be angry here. You're thinking that you're being the character, putting yourself in their place.
Yeah. It can be kind of dangerous if you're like going for the emotion. You sort of want to be going for what the character wants, because that's what we do in life. We don't go through life thinking like, I'm going to feel sad now. We go through life trying to get what we need all the time. And then somebody's stopping us, or something is stopping us, or something about ourselves is stopping us. So you sort of go about creating all of that for yourself in the character.
Do you have any experience either with yourself or anyone you know with agoraphobia?
So I mean, I guess the answer is no. The short answer is no. The longer answer is that it felt relatable to me in some ways because I lived by myself off and on quite a bit in my 20s. And I would have these days where I would like just not talk to anybody. Like I would just stay inside. I would have a day off. And I would just find it easier to like be by myself rather than like try and go out and be with people. And I mean, I was going through a lot in my 20s, and I had like anxiety and depression that I was dealing with. So all of that was involved, and all that was a factor. But I sort of had this, and then like, it's like after you spend a couple of days by yourself, and you're not like bouncing your own voice off of another person. I think you like your perception sort of starts to change because you don't have anybody saying, no, you're not an idiot, or like, no, it's fine that you did that. You just have your own thoughts, and that's all that's coming back at you. So I feel like I kind of had that experience a little bit on and off in my 20s of sort of like just being so in my own head, where I didn't feel like I was very connected to people in the outside world. And then, because I started working on this before COVID, but I did feel like once COVID came along and I started working on it a lot, I sort of did hope that people would have that feeling a little bit more of even though of course it was a completely different circumstance, but I think we all had, you know, a little bit of that experience of just being inside and feeling like you want to go out, but you can't. But then I also spoke with, a man who has a podcast called the Agoraphobia podcast, Drew Ensalada, because I wanted to understand more about agoraphobia. But also the show was written in the 80s, and it's at a time when I think we just had at least less of a public dialogue about mental illness. And the in the description of the play, it says she's agoraphobic, but I don't think she's actually agoraphobic after speaking more to Drew about it, because he was explaining agoraphobia as sort of more based on like you're afraid to go out because you're afraid to have a panic attack, basically, or you're afraid to leave your couch because you're afraid to have a panic attack. So he was explaining it to me more in that people are afraid of what will happen to them if they go out the door, that they will have a panic attack and that they won't be able to come back from it, or whatever. Just a panic attack is so terrible that they won't be able to deal with that. So their world gets smaller and smaller and smaller to avoid that situation. And there's nothing in the text that alludes to Spanky ever having that experience. So I think that the playwright, John Ford Noonan, who is incredibly interesting, and I love this play, I don't know that he necessarily thought about the diagnosis in a very like clinical way, or I think it was just sort of like, well, she can't go outside, so she's agoraphobic. There are some stressors that happen to her before she decides to stay inside, which makes sense. But I don't think that she's like technically agoraphobic, if that makes sense. Yeah.
How did you choose the play? How did you choose Noonan's book? Is it a book?
So
it's a book, right?
It is. It's a play. It's a play, and it's interesting because they did the show in the 80s right after it was written. I mean, with John Ford Noonan, they did it like once in New York City, like down in the East Village with like all the experimental theaters in the 80s. But that's really it. And then there've been like maybe one or two pop-up productions around the country, but it's a very little known play. I mean, I had never heard of it, but the monologue is in a monologue book of like women's monologues. But to answer your question, it's a play, but it's not published anywhere. So like when I wanted to read it, I had to get it straight from from Concord Theatricals, which is like the publishing house, and they've sent me a transcript basically. But I found the show when I was auditioning for a theater company years ago, I think 2016. And the man who was running the company, I had my first audition and I did a Tennessee Williams monologue. And then he said, come back and find a monologue that speaks to your soul, but makes you feel like, makes you fall flat on your face. And he said, you can do anything you want. You can be a man, you can be a woman, you can be a child, you can be an animal, you can be an amoeba. I don't care. Go find anything you want. And as an actor, that is a thing that nobody ever says to you, because everybody's always telling you what type you are and what you can play and what you can't play and what you should play. And everybody will tell you something else. And then your job as an actor, if you want to get cast in things, is to try to be a mind reader and figure out how people judge you when they first see you, and then try to find a monologue that fits that so that they'll cast you, which is an exhausting process that we all go through constantly as actors. So to be able so for somebody to say, go find a monologue that just speaks to your soul and it doesn't have anything to do with how you look or how you present in society, is a freeing and terrifying thing. And I thought I just, all of a sudden I'm like looking at, Long Day's Journey into Night and like all these male characters that I probably would have loved to play, but like would never have the opportunity. But that none of them really spoke to me. And I ended up at the Drama Bookshop, which is this really famous little bookstore in Midtown that was recently just taken over and saved by Lin-Manuel Miranda during the pandemic. But it's like the place where all the actors in New York City go when they have to find a play, or they have to find a scene to work on in class, or if they have to find a monologue. So I went there and I was just going through all the books and I found this monologue, started working on it, went to the audition, started working on it in class. And one of my teachers said, just do the whole play. And here we are.
Can you describe how you prepare for the play? What's your daily routine like as far as getting yourself ready to perform? And obviously you have to memorize the lines. Like these are things that we just don't know about. Those of us who are not actors, we know you have to memorize stuff, and that's about it.
Yes. Yeah, you do have to memorize. And I mean, we did the show in the summer of 2022 already in Maine. So we did it once. And we did like actually a free library show in March at a Westchester library. And so for every venue, it's different. So you do have to memorize. You have to figure out, and this is weird for me because I'm producing the show. So I'm the producer and the actor, which I don't recommend really, honestly, to anybody. It feels like an impossible job. Because you have to figure out, I think being a producer, you have to figure out things that actors shouldn't really think about. So it makes it a little difficult in that way. But you have to figure out you have to sort of figure out what's going on with the character. And for Spanky, it's a mystery. We don't know what happened to her and why she is ultimately in this position. There's so much about the show that is like open in a wonderful way. So for me, I need to make choices about what works for me in playing Spanky, so that I have a history and that I know what she wants and I know why I'm doing the things she's doing in each moment of the show. And then in rehearsal, we work sort of moment by moment. This play, she listens. She's watching a baseball game. She makes tapes for Billy Martin, who's the Yankees manager at the time. She has like an amazing statistician's mind. So she watches a game and she has a problem with it, and she makes a tape for Billy and she sends it to him, giving him advice. She talks on the phone a little bit, and then she listens to these tapes of these like made up vignettes that are trying to get her out the door. So we sort of rehearse just a little bit at a time, section by section. And then, it's sort of a combination of like, how do we want it to look? And then is it telling the story, and is it serving the story? Is it serving the character? And then also kind of like, what do we want the audience to get out of it, which is not usually an actor's job, really, which is why it can get a little tricky. And that's why I have a director who is not me. Yeah, we just sort of, we have all, it's a very prop heavy show and a very tech heavy show. It's a lot of sound. So we just kind of get together in the rehearsal room and we just like play around and see what works. Like some things make sense and some things don't make any sense. And we try to figure out how to make it make sense. Yeah.
Who are the other people involved? Like who else is there in the rehearsal room with you? What are they doing?
So my director, his name is Jonathan Libman, and he is he also works for Major League Baseball. That's his sort of day job, which is super cool because he's very knowledgeable about directing and about baseball. He plays baseball as well, and he's actually sort of in charge of the pitch clock right now, the new pitch clock. So he's going all over the country and, I don't know, calming people down, helping them figure out what to do with that. So it's just pretty cool because he has like a very interesting inside look at things. And he's also, his father's a playwright, and Jonathan is a director and a playwright, and he works at the Actors Studio in their playwright directing wing. He grew up in New York, so he's like an old school New Yorker. But I just found him through an ad 3 years ago in the pandemic, just looking for a director, and just a huge extra bonus that he also knows so much about baseball. But so in terms of what he does in the rehearsal room is he's in charge. He tells me what to do, he's not dictatorial in that way at all. We're really like a team, but it's sort of his job to make sure that the show has an arc and that it makes sense and that we're getting the story across and that there's a point for the audience being there. Yeah, so he'll tell me to do something, and then he'll tell me that doesn't make any sense, try this. And then my very good friend Tatiana Kott is my co-producer. She's really an actress and a dancer. She's a teacher. She's from the Soviet Union. She's been in the country for quite a long time now. But she's someone I met 10, 15 years ago. We did a play together. And she's just an amazing individual. She just is just incredibly intelligent and a really hard worker. And so we had a good connection. And when I decided to do the show, I just said, there's no acting, there's no dancing, but like, will you help me with it? Because I just need somebody I can trust, who I think is a really amazing theater maker. And she said, yeah, I'm there. So she's just helping me with everything, really. She helps Jonathan and she helps me. We have some choreography a little bit in the show. But I just trust her, and there's just so much to do, whether it's like helping us figure out costumes or the set, because we're a very small team. It's me, Tatiana, Jonathan, and then my sound person, Jason Wiener, who is also, he's also an actor, and I work with him at a different theater company. So it's the four of us. And the more and more I work, the more I realize it's just like all four of these people, I think we're really hard workers. We're pretty old school. We're all like the same generation. And we all wear different hats within the team. So Jason does sound, and he also does a few other things. And he's also an actor. That's how I know him. He's also a dad, and he has a day job. So that's pretty much our team, those four people. And I've known everybody for a while, and we just, we're just problem solvers together, I guess. But they're all just fantastic, really, really wonderful, great people who I've just are just so dependable and just fantastic, so talented. And yeah.
Do you also spend time like at home by yourself working things out?
I would, if my life was different. I used to,
All
but
right.
yeah, I mean, I have two kids. I have an 8-year-old and a almost 5-year-old. My husband is a public school teacher, and he also runs an after school program. So he doesn't get home till 6 o'clock or 7. And then I have multiple other jobs. I teach lots of other places. So I do try to work on my own, but and we're also trying to move it like the last 3 years, really since the pandemic, like it just, our life is
Mhm.
crazy in a wonderful way, incredibly
Mhm.
full, but it's hard for me. It's just hard for me to work at home because there's always something to do. There's
Right.
always
Well,
laundry or something. Yeah.
right. Well, ideally, what would you do at home by yourself if you had the time and a room to do it in?
I mean, I memorize lines at home for sure. Ideally, I would probably experiment more with like my sense memory choices and sort of like do some exercises and work on them within the show and see how they affect me, see how they affect the character. And in a way, I do that in a way, I'm working on the play all the time in my brain. I'm a very anxious person, but at this point in my life, I feel like it's a superpower. I don't really feel like it's problematic, but like my brain is 200%, 300% pretty much all the time. So I'm always working on the character in the show in some part of my brain, whether it's just like thinking, trying to figure out this one thing that I haven't figured out about Spanky, or whether it's just like thinking about the songs that Spanky listens to, or like for me, I listen to a lot of music. And so a lot of times I'll listen to like a lyric and all of a sudden I'll realize that it sort of applies to Spanky in this way. And that'll sort of send me down a rabbit hole, because really acting is so much about imagination. So I do a lot of that work in my brain, which can be problematic for an actor because you need to make it physical. But if I had more time, I would experiment with more things like that physically. Um, and I would probably just go through the play like all the time. If I had time and I had space, I would just do the play by myself all the time.
Mhm.
But that's not quite happening.
Yeah. Um, what do you do to, in general, cultivate a creative mind?
That's what a lovely question. I mean, I guess in a way, I think a lot of people might say like to have a beginner's mind and to be curious. But I feel like I am like my husband, for instance, he's a teacher, but he is also a visual artist. And to me, he has a beginner's mind. Like he wants to understand and like know everything about everything. He wants to ask questions and he wants to watch videos and learn these things. And I am not like that because I feel like I'm very selective with what I want to learn about. I think a lot of it is that just at this point in my life, I don't have time to be curious about everything. So I think I keep my curiosity kind of narrow. But I think for me, it's two things. I think it's honestly like a practice of gratitude, which I really we also go to a Buddhist temple, although we haven't been since COVID. But I would say we're more or less practicing Buddhists. We did get married there, but the idea of just gratitude and like um remaining open to sort of the universe, for me that just allows me to keep going all the time and to sort of keep problem solving rather than focusing on all of the terrible things that happen to an actor within a given day or within a year. um so that I think helps me to like just focus on taking the next step forward, because even, I mean, we're having a hiccup now with the show, but like we're all healthy, we're in New York City, um like everything is fine. It's just we're having a hiccup with the show. And so for me to like feel like my life is over because we're having a problem with the show is just silly. But having that attitude, I think, allows me to just go to the next step and do the next thing and to move on. um and then I guess I think for me it's also just about being really sensitive, which I think I've always been, and I think that's why I'm an actor. I just feel things very deeply. um and um I like to learn about other people and like hear stories. So like I listen to like a lot of audiobooks now. I did listen to the news a lot, but for me I kind of have to like um I have to turn the news off sometimes, because it can be way too much for me sometimes, because it's just, there's so many things going on right now that I'll just start crying and go through my day crying, which is not necessarily productive for anybody. So I've started listening to a lot more podcasts and audiobooks, but I love just like, I like to listen to like a lot of historical fiction, so that I'm like learning about other people's lives, which also gives you perspective and gratitude, I think, as well, because you just see what all these other people have lived through. But I think for me, it's remaining grateful and allowing myself to stay sensitive, even if it means I have to turn the news off because the news is too much for me. And like, know that that's okay. I can go listen to the news again and like still be an engaged citizen. I just don't have to be an engaged citizen every minute of the day. And then also to sort of like use my creativity to reach other people and to empathize with other people and to bring people together. I don't know if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. It does. Do you meditate?
I used to meditate. I used to do yoga like every single day. The last couple months I've gotten away from that, although I will get back to it, because I've been doing yoga since I was 15. So it's sort of like, it's a forever practice, but I go through. So I don't meditate very much. I used to meditate when we went to temple, because we would have like we'd have a 20-minute silent meditation, and we'd have like a 10-minute chanting meditation. I don't meditate very much. Mm-hmm. I probably should. Probably everybody should, but it is very hard for me to like, it's hard.
You've got a crazy life now. You've got 2 kids, a job.
Yes.
You're acting, you live in New York City.
When you most need it, right? Like most people would say that's when you most need it. But
yeah,
I walk a lot. Like I walk a lot on purpose. Like if I can walk there, I'll walk there instead of taking the subway or instead of driving. So I think for me, like the moving meditation sort of just works better for me and my mm-hmm. brain. So I walk a lot, and that's like a little bit of a meditation in that way for me.
Tell me about where you live and why you love New York City and the Bronx.
Oh, I love New York so much. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, just because I grew up in a small town and I just always wanted to be a city girl. I think also the way my mind works, even though I think a lot of people think if you have an anxious mind, the city is overwhelming to you. I really love being like a nobody in the middle of strangers. I really love that feeling. I don't necessarily like going to parties. Like I'm an introvert, but I like working in a coffee shop or taking a walk in a park. I love going to Central Park. I like being surrounded by other humans. Don't necessarily want to like make small talk with all of them. Although sometimes I do. Like I also like those really special, like little just stranger interactions that you can have in New York City. I just love the history of New York. I love the East Village and the West Village, and just seeing the I don't know, just the uniqueness and sort of the magic and like everybody who's been there and everything that's happened there. And now that I've lived here for 22 years, it's like every neighborhood in New York has these amazing memories for me. And I remember when I first moved here and I was in college, my roommate at the time, who's still one of my best friends, she was like, I can't stand walking around because like every corner has like a memory. And I was just like, wow, that's crazy. But now I understand that. And it's true. Every corner has a memory. And I don't know, to me, New York is just magic. And right now we live in the apartment that my husband grew up in. And I never wanted to live in the Bronx. I never thought that I would live in the Bronx because I love the East Village, and like I love being, in like the artsy East Village and like the little restaurants and the little coffee shops and the little bookstores, and I love being around other weird artists. But I moved in with my husband when we got married. Before we got married, and at the time I had a big artist loft in Brooklyn that we never wanted to give up, and we thought we would never have to give up, but we had to give it up during COVID, which was like another heartbreak. But now we're full on Bronx, and I just love our community. We live in we're about to move because we live in a co-op that doesn't gain equity. So we want to move and like make an investment and sort of have something to show for it. But we live in a big 4-building complex. And when I remember when I first started visiting my husband, and like people would say hi to me, like the neighbors would say hi. Like everybody knew each other, which is for me was a weird thing because the first 10 years I lived in New York, I moved like 20 times because I was in college and I moved every semester and every summer, and then I would live somewhere for a year and move, live somewhere for 2 years and move. So you're cordial to your neighbors, but you don't necessarily know them. And so but these people, a lot of people we live with have known Eric, my husband, since he was 6 months old. Like they've known him his whole life. They knew his father and his mother, who both passed away. So there's just this amazing feeling of community. People really look out for each other. We have a sort of group of families where we're all raising our children together. We have a playground outside, and we go down, as much as we can every afternoon, which is not every afternoon, but as much as we can, we're all down in the playground together. And it just is just a beautiful communal feeling. And the neighborhood itself is not really New Yorky. Like we don't ever order delivery. There's no coffee shop you can just like walk out to and hang out at, which for me is something that I miss. And also we have a car. It's a neighborhood where most people drive. You usually drive to the train or you drive all the way into the city. But we're on the coast. There's a ferry near us, and where we're about to move is also right on the water. We're going to have a balcony and look out and see the Throgs Neck Bridge, because I also really like to be near water. But I just really like the community in the Bronx. And the other thing I like about the Bronx is that it still feels like sort of real old school New York, because New York has changed a lot. I mean, and especially since COVID, there's a CVS on every corner now, which didn't used to be the case. A lot of the mom and pop shops have gone, not everything, but a lot. And that is a shame. Although there are still little neighborhoods that still feel like they used to feel 20 years ago. But I like the Bronx because it still feels just like New York to me. It hasn't changed that much. It's families, it's working class, it's just normal people working really hard. And we also have a lot of problems. We're sort of underserved here. There's a lot of kids that just need a lot more than what they're getting. My husband's a special education teacher, so it's challenging. It's not the safest neighborhood, but it's just wonderful, wonderful people that we are lucky enough to surround ourselves with. Mm-hmm. And I work at the school here, and it's just great people. So, and they're real. They're like, there are some neighborhoods in New York where it's like everybody's super wealthy. Just like in this other world where you're just like, who are you? You're not a real person. I don't know how to talk to you because your life is so much different than mine. Mm-hmm. I know I shouldn't say that, but just like people are just so cool, down to earth in the Bronx. They're like, they're going to tell you what they think, and that's it.
All right. So, excuse me. So your play, All She Cares About Is the Yankees, was going to air is not the right word. It was going to
premiere.
Premiere.
Whatever.
It was going to premiere May 16, 17, and 18, but that's been delayed because of a film shoot at the same location. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a hiccup. Yes, a little bit of a. We basically just didn't have enough time to set up and do the show the way we wanted to, which happens. It happens. It's happened before to my director, and but yeah. So we go live with my parents in Maine for summer, which is also an amazing thing that we get to do. So, and Tatiana, my producer, who is an actress, she has a show at the end of June. I'm directing High School Musical at the middle school down the block. So I have to be all in it for that. So we need to come back after the summer because we all sort of have these other things, but after the summer, it'll be in the fall. And anybody can follow us on Instagram at Yankees_play. And if you're in New York,
Yankees_play.
You can come see us then. Yeah.
Great. I'll put a link to that on the podcast show notes page at paultrammell.com/streamchasers and eccentrics. I can edit this next question out if you don't want to do it, but can you perform something for it? Can you recite some of the monologue?
Oh God. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Great. I'll do one of the tapes to Billy. How about that?
Tape to Billy. Is Billy her? Oh, Billy's the baseball guy.
Let me explain it a little bit. And actually, let me just pull it up just because I haven't. Give me 1 second because I haven't done it.
Take your time. I can edit out any long pauses.
Okay. So Okay. How do I zoom in on this without? Come on, there we go. Okay. So, wait, I lost you. There you are.
I still see and hear you.
Yeah. So, so the show is taking place in the 80s. We put it exactly in 1983 because so Billy Martin is manager of the Yankees at the time. And he, for people who don't know, he was sort of a very, I don't know, controversial manager in a lot of ways. He was fired by the Yankees multiple times and then came back. He had a drinking problem. He had a mistress, would like get in fights. Just sort of like a huge character, but also when he was doing his job, he was very good at it. At least that's my understanding of it. And to be fair, I am a Yankees fan, but I'm not nearly as knowledgeable as I probably should be. So that's my understanding of Billy Martin. Spanky in the play has had a real life encounter with him before the play has started, and she also just has an amazing mind and like understands what's going on with the game, probably understands some of the mistakes that Billy's making, and she feels like she should give him advice. And she feels like there are times that when she knows better than he does what should be happening. So she makes tapes and sends them to him. And, we don't know if he listens to them or not, but she sends him tapes. Oh, but she also has a Billy Martin doll. She has 3 huge Yankee dolls because she also has a friend who like makes dolls and goes to like doll competitions. So her friend Corky has made her these 3 huge Yankee dolls. So they're also in the play. And one of them is Billy. And she talks to Billy, the doll, a lot, as well as makes tapes for the real actual Billy Martin and sends them. She's a little crazy. So yeah, so this is her making a tape for Billy. Dear Billy, since we swept Cleveland on Sunday, you've completely lost it. Feel how you're breathing. You're not getting air even halfway down. Look at how your shoulders are all hunched. Back in the first inning, there was no reason to go after the first base ump on the DP call. The psychological advantage simply wasn't there. All the signals are there. You've been hitting the hard stuff. In my last letter, number 71, and also number 63, 64, and 65, I suggested we set a quota. 2 beers after a game. Okay, 3 tops. 4 if it's been a painful and heartbreaking loss. Billy, the hard stuff puts you in the land of the dark dragons. You get wild, reckless, stupid. Billy, look at me when I'm talking to you. Are you doing it on purpose? I don't want to hear about the devil. There is no devil. There's only God on the hard stuff. Listen, pal, for us, there's no life without the Yankees. So do me a favor. Next time the Dark Dragons come during the game, pick up the dugout phone, get an outside line, and give me a call. I'm at 989-9033 and say, Spanks, give it to me straight. I'm always home. Love, your greatest fan and the biggest Yankees fan Chisholm, Minnesota's ever produced, Maureen Spanky Oberfeld.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's.
I was over here laughing the whole time. That's so good.
Good. It's funny. Yeah, she's a kook. She is a kook for sure.
Yeah. Oh, I love just how you bring that out. I mean, it's like, this is a crazy person, no doubt about it.
Yes. And we try not to give it away right away because, things get interesting, and this is kind of early on, but right, I think this is the first time when you're like, oh, this person's not okay, is when she brings out the tape recorder and starts talking to it. So yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Gosh, well, I wish you the best of luck with the play. And
thank you so much, Paul.
Yeah, and I'll put all your links on the podcast show notes page. So send me any links that you want. I've got one, I think, so far that's like your website that has the film on it.
The Instagram is good, and the website. Yeah, the website I need to I need to edit the website, but isn't that always the case, right? Like
it's a constant process, isn't it?
Yes. So where are you? Obviously, you don't need to.
I'm in Panama. I'm in Boca. I'm on a sailboat in Bocas del Toro, Panama, the Caribbean side of Panama. I'm very, very close to Costa Rica. As a matter of fact, I can see Costa Rica when I take my boat a little bit outside. But
And do you usually stay there, or you go everywhere?
I've been here for a year now, and I started living on I bought my boat in Massachusetts in 19, and sold my house right before I bought the boat. So I was homeless for a little while there, living out of my Suburban. But I've been living aboard and sailing since then, and I've spent a lot of time in the Bahamas, and I've been here one other time, and I was in Newfoundland, Canada, 2 summers ago.
Awesome. My
parents
and I
passed through Maine at the time.
Newfoundland.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they kept sending us like all these amazing iceberg pictures because my mom loves cold scapes. They're going to a lot. They were supposed to come to the show on Friday and then go to Alaska. So they're still going to Alaska. They're not coming to the show, but they're coming to see us. But yeah, they were like, Newfoundland looks amazing.
It's and it's fantastic. What I look for in destinations on my boat is nature, raw, deep nature. And of course the open ocean is that big time, but it's hard to find anchorages that are just pure nature. There's roads and houses everywhere. So the Bahamas has it. The entire eastern seaboard of the U.S. basically has none. And you get into a tiny bit in Nova Scotia, and then Newfoundland has it big time. The south coast of Newfoundland is unpopulated, and there are fjords. You can sail deep into these fjords and anchor with mountains all around you. And there are no roads, no telephone poles, no, not even planes flying overhead. I mean, there's just, you are in deep nature, and it was fantastic. Yeah, and I wrote a book about it.
Are you solo most of the time?
I'm solo. I was laughing when you were saying how sometimes you don't talk to somebody all day long. I'm like, that's my I'm like, I was thinking, like, you're the only person I'm going to talk to today.
No, I mean, I didn't want to go into it, but there were truthfully many, many days where I was like, I'm just going to have dinner by myself. I don't need to fucking talk to anybody. Yeah. But
yeah, that's my most of the time. Yeah. I'm happy that way though. That's fine by me.
But you have internet and you're
yeah, I have Starlink.
I imagine you probably do, depending on where. Okay, yeah. Have you been to Acadia when you go to Maine? Have you been to Acadia National Park and around Bar Harbor and stuff?
No. I just passed through Maine. I was there for only about a week. I remember I went to Tennant's Harbor and Quahog Bay, and Rockland or Rockport.
Yeah, because southern Maine is a lot more populated. If you ever go back up north and you're there in the winter, if you go to Acadia National Park where Bar Harbor is, there's just not a lot of people there in the winter, but it's beautiful, and there's like some sound, beautiful sound. So if you ever go back, I would recommend checking out Acadia, because in the winter there's nobody there.
Yeah, I definitely won't be there on my sailboat in the winter. No chance.
Okay, well, no, that's fair. That's fair. Well, then you should just go visit, go for some hikes, and then take the sailboat. Yeah, in the summer it's crazy. There's so many people in the summer, but in the winter it's very.
Yeah, I was there in early or mid to late May, and it wasn't. I was there before most of the boats got there.
Yeah,
but it was cold. It was cold and foggy. But
cold here. It was like 45 degrees today and raining. Like I should have had my winter coat, but I refused to take my coat, like my winter coat out. But no, it's been such a weird May here. Very cold. I mean, we had some 75, 80 degree days, but then it keeps going back to like 40 overnight. It's weird. I don't know. Hey, I'm sure the summer will be 100.
Yeah, it's 85 every day here. Every day.
That's amazing.
85, 86. It's extremely stable temperature every day of the year. Highs in the mid 80s, lows in the upper 70s. Hey, let's go ahead and sign off, but stay on the line for just a minute.
Sure.
Amelia, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having me, Paul. And you asked great questions. It's been a blast. I appreciate it.